I watched this Ilunga Makabu Tabisu Machunu rematch, and like most people, I was not impressed with Makabu. However, unlike many other people, I've never really been impressed by Makabu. I've always been quite surprised that there are so many people who are. I remember going into the Tony Bellew fight. I saw it as a very winnable fight for Bellew, and there were people who were almost felt insulted hearing what I was saying, that Bellew had a good chance of winning. They said that I was massively underestimating Makabu and that he's like a cruiserweight version of Stevenson, and Bellew got smashed to bits by Stevenson. How could I possibly think that he'd do any better against Makabu, who's a bigger, stronger version? All this kind of stuff. And I was like, what are you watching? Makabu is absolutely nothing like Adonis Stevenson. And the first time I'd watched Makabu was the first fight he had against Tabisu Machunu. And in that fight, Makabu got lit up like a Christmas tree. I mean, he was getting battered. There was no defense there. When Machunu would open up, Makabu was just passively standing there, taking loads of shots. Now, obviously, he showed a tremendous amount of toughness, resilience, determination, because he eventually wore Machunu down and stopped him, I believe, in the 11th round. So he showed tremendous perseverance, and he wore him down. Although Machunu didn't pace himself well. I think Machunu was in love with his athleticism and his superior skills to such a degree that he got a bit carried away in the early rounds with letting his hands go, and there wasn't enough gas left in the tank for the late rounds. The way he was fighting, he didn't think Makabu would be able to last the 12, but he obviously was wrong about that. So I've never been particularly impressed by Makabu. Even after Makabu lost to Tony Bellew, he came back and he put some wins together, and he's obviously WBC Cruiserweight champion again. Once again, when I started talking about the possibility of Canelo fighting Makabu, I've been quite dismissive of Makabu, saying, I don't think he's that good, and I think Canelo's got a very good chance of beating this guy. And again, loads of people turning up saying, what are you talking about? Makabu's really dangerous and he's really good. And I'm like, okay, the skill gap between Makabu and Canelo is massive. It is massive. And I'm amazed that people couldn't see this. Makabu, all the times I've watched him, and even more so after his loss to Bellew in the past couple years, when he fought Kudryashov and people like that, Makabu has shown really poor balance. He just looks awkward in the ring at times. Still very tough. Definitely got power there. But to me, he just looks like, I don't want to say a fighter who's over the hill, but when fighters reach, and look, he's probably never had the greatest coordination and balance to begin with, but when fighters get older, they start to get this kind of old man movement about them. Maybe some of you guys know what I'm talking about. They start moving like an old man. And when I watched Makabu, when I saw him against Kudryashov and several other of his recent fights, that's what he looks like. This weird kind of janky old man movement about him. This lack of coordination, awkwardness with his footwork and stuff like that. Lack of balance, inability to judge distance a lot of the time. So this is all the stuff I was seeing. And therefore I was very surprised that people think that he's this, really dangerous and underrated fighter. Yeah, he's dangerous because he's big and strong, he can punch, and he's tough, he's determined. But in terms of his skills, in terms of his ability, he is leagues and leagues and leagues below Canelo. Canelo, it will pick this guy apart with ease from a technical point of view. If Makabu can impose his size and strength on Canelo and hit Canelo harder than he's ever been hit before, maybe he could pull off an upset, but that's easier said than done. I'm expecting Makabu to be getting hit far more than Canelo. And this Machunu rematch has not made, certainly hasn't made me change my mind on that. If anything, it's made me even more confident that Canelo will beat this guy if that fight goes ahead. Because in this fight, and look, Machunu is a very skilled fighter in his own right. He's no Canelo, but he's athletically gifted, southpaw himself, fast, elusive, slick. I've always, quite rated Thabiso Machunu. I was very impressed by the way that Alexander Usyk completely dismantled him, because Machunu's a solid fighter. So I'm aware that Machunu has certain aspects of his game that are different to Canelo's, and styles do make fights. But nevertheless, if you again just look at the coordination, the difference in coordination between Machunu and Makabu, the difference in speed, it was quite pronounced. And as far as the way the fight was scored, I thought Machunu won the fight. I'm not going to say it was a robbery, but I do think that Machunu was unfortunate not to get the benefit of the doubt from the judges. With that being said, he didn't do himself any favors by not capitalizing on certain moments when he buzzed Ilunga Makabu. I don't know how badly Makabu was hurt, but he certainly was able to knock Makabu off balance at certain points. And Makabu didn't come straight back all the time. Sometimes he'd just cover up and wait for the follow-up by Thabiso Machunu, which never came. So I feel like Machunu could have pressed home his advantage at certain points in the fight to make certain rounds more decisive in his favor. He didn't do that. He allowed too much room for interpretation of certain rounds in terms of the scoring of them. He allowed too much room for that. He tried to be too much of a boxer. There were moments when he was pushing Makabu back, but they were far too infrequent. And that gave the judges the excuse, if they needed one, the excuse to side with the champion. And obviously the champion is with Don King, and he's getting this apparently shot against Canelo, or Canelo's getting a shot against him, whatever way you want to look at it. So yeah, I think Machunu does have to blame himself to some degree. Although, like I say, for me, he won the fight by maybe 2-3 rounds. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about Ilunga Makabu's performance here against. And also, one thing I'll say about Makabu, he is a very brave, tough guy. But in a fight this close, and it was close because it was a split decision that he won over Machunu. In a fight this close, I would have expected him to actually step on the gas a bit more in the late rounds, because he's been able to do that in previous fights, and he certainly did that in the first Machunu fight. But here, there was no drive in the final few rounds, almost as if he knew that no matter what happened in there, within reason, he was going to get the decision. You know? He was fighting like a guy who knew that the judges would favor him in the slow rounds. And that's unfortunate, because it obviously takes away from the entertainment of the fight, from the drama in the fight. If a guy is just laying back thinking, the judges have got my back, I don't need to even go for it here, then he's not going to go for it. And therefore, we're not going to see any fireworks late on. You know? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below.